Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspirational Interviews with me, Hannah Levin from Heartfelt Wellbeing. And these weekly interviews have ranged all over the place, and today's is going to be especially juicy. We have an amazing guest, Lois Hollis, who is out to help empower us by exposing guilt and shame. So I'm just going to read a little bit about Lois before I bring her into the interview and get you really excited to talk with her or to listen to her. Some of you have sent in questions ahead of time, and I'm really excited to share those. But also feel free to type questions into the chat if you're here live with us today. So I'm gonna, so we have some folks joining. Yay! Folks are coming on. All right, so let me just tell you a little bit about Lois and then I'll introduce you to her. So Lois Hollis, RN, BSN, Reverend, shifts our opinion from one of the most forbidden subjects, shame and guilt. Her passion and mission are to help each of us evolve into self-love by alleviating the suffering caused by shame and guilt. That self-love path is something that I am very familiar with and teach a lot about in my program. So very, very excited to talk about it from this angle. So Lois came to learn that shame and guilt were within everything that she felt. She has a very challenging past, we can say. And the good news is that she could heal her anger, depression, migraines, rage, fears, pain, etc. from what she has learned. So she shares her 15 years experience as a shame and guilt educator, counselor, author, and filmmaker to give us an effective and lasting way to health, wellness, and spiritual maturity. So I'm super excited to welcome Lois to our inspirational interviews, and I'm going to bring her on now. Hi, Lois.
Hi.
Welcome to Inspirational Interviews.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here and to talk about my favorite subject, contrary to some people, but
right.
is my special.
Right. Yeah, we were just talking about how it was kind of a forbidden topic for a long time, and now lots of people are wanting to talk about it. So how about you start by giving us your definitions of what shame and guilt are?
Okay. I call it shame guilt, not shame and guilt.
Great.
Okay. This has derailed us from actually processing how to get out of the shame guilt prison. Shame and guilt are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have lots of people coming to me to help them get rid of the guilt that seems intractable. And I tell them, yes, you cannot get rid of guilt until you get rid of shame. And no one knows that. That's the secret. Shame and guilt are the same energy, and you understand energy.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they're two different names is because shame is located or sources from the unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Guilt sources from the conscious mind.
Shame is from the conscious mind.
Shame is from the unconscious mind.
Oh, okay. And
guilt is from conscious mind. Now, this goes back to medicine. In medical career, if a bacteria is in the stomach, they call it gastritis. If the same bacteria is in the brain, they'll call it meningitis. If it's in the gallbladder, if it's in the lungs, they call it pneumonia. Okay, now I'm oversimplifying this. Please forgive me if any medical person's online. But it shows you that our culture tends to name things because of the location rather than the origin.
Mm-hmm.
Most people that I have talked with, leaders, healers, they say that shame is bad and guilt is okay. Guilt keeps us moral.
Interesting.
And there are even books out as early as like a year or two ago that said the problem with our culture right now in society and unrest is that we need more shame and guilt. So they're advocating more of shame and guilt because it keeps us moral. I'm inviting people to skip the guilt game and say, I want to help my friend move because I feel it's the right thing for me to do, rather than I will feel guilty if I don't. We're evolving.
Yeah.
And this keeps us, shame and guilt is what keeps us from evolving.
Uh-huh.
That is the main, it isn't not, I didn't meditate enough and I didn't do enough for the whatever. That's all part of it, but really shame and guilt is the biggest obstruction to our evolution.
And it sounds like also has been used to help control people.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. It's that's a whole, I think everyone kind of knows that one. But the important thing is that shame, guilt is an energy. Uh-huh. It is not an emotion. Shame, guilt activates the negative part of our emotions. Like depression is the negative part and compassion is the positive part. Every emotion has a positive and a negative orientation. And shame and guilt alters our positive emotions into negative emotions. So never say that's my shame. Never own shame. Never say my guilt. Don't try to heal. They say, we need to heal shame and guilt. No, you need to release shame and guilt and send it back to the wherever so they can transmute it.
Let it go. Yeah.
Yes. So that's really important as a first step to understand why shame and guilt has taken a lock onto us, because we have been told it's our emotion and we got to love our emotion. Well, we do. I mean, that's a whole nother story. But shame and guilt does not belong to the human race. And that's a whole nother other story. But just know
what does it belong to?
That's another long story.
Okay.
But it just is an energy placed upon the earth, and that's just the way it is. That's a good talk.
Okay. We might have to have you on again.
Yeah, shame and guilt is foreign to the human race.
But yet we've let it permeate us.
Because we were taught that as a little kid. Oh, don't do that. That's terrible. That's shameful. Right. Oh, girl. Oh, you're guilty. That's good because then you can confess your sins and then you should be guilty. And, it's in everything. It's in everything and everyone.
Yeah.
So just know that shame and guilt is not of you, but you need to address it to get rid of it. You can't just say, I released all the shame and guilt that's within me. Well, if you could do that, we wouldn't have any problems on the earth. And you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to actually recognize it, find it, and then release it. It's like you're cleaning your house. You have to pick up the paper and put it in the trash. You got to pick up the dust and put it in the trash. At this moment in time, maybe in 50 years we can do that. I don't know. But right now, we can't. Like I'm holding this in my hand and I can't say it's an apple and then change it to an orange. We don't have that ability yet. I think we will, but not today. Okay.
So let me ask you some questions that were sent in by members of this group, and see what you have to say, putting it in a little more tangible context within people's lives. So Ulrika wrote in and she said, why in the first place do I feel guilt when trying to look after myself? Where do insecurities come from that make me hold back and not dare to take up space? Has that to So she's from Germany. So has that to do with guilt and shame? How do I define if I am ashamed of myself? So that's a lot.
Well, it's a lot, but it's very, very simple. Anybody can make it complicated.
Mm-hmm.
We need to, take shame and guilt down a peg. It's an energy. That's it.
Uh-huh.
Okay. When a person feels guilty, like she has described, and that's perfect, instead of letting guilt take hold of you and say, oh my God, what did I do wrong? I can't love myself. And that's just the biggest thing, trying to, be at peace with ourselves. Talk to the feeling that you have. Do not talk to guilt. Do not talk to shame. You got to feel angry or sad, or I'm not confident, or I don't give a darn, or whatever you're feeling. Take a pen and paper and say, hi, sadness. Hi, I don't feel good enough. And let that, see where that takes you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people do that and they talk to their emotion and they say, oh, well, I'm okay now. And this, in 5 minutes, they got it all solved. But that's in the mind. So I'm warning people, like, you can start writing, but it'll take at least a couple weeks to actually feel that emotion, talk to that emotion, and reparent that emotion. And I have a video on my website and also on YouTube that shows that process.
Oh, great. Wonderful.
So what I would give the advice, I would say, don't go down the guilt path. Try to talk to the emotion that you're feeling. You're feeling guilt, but I know you're feeling something else. So talk to that emotion. Don't talk to shame and guilt. So if you can just do that, that's huge, because you don't go down the shame guilt hole. Because once you go down that hole, you're really stuck. I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I find with, so in my program that I run, the Vitality Circle, work just with women. And I find a lot that many women are not so sure of what they feel. They're so used to attending to others, right? And making sure that everybody else has their needs met, that there can be challenges in even knowing what they feel, what they want. Right.
I have a great sentence that they can ask themselves.
Okay, great.
When you're feeling that way, say, who inside of me wants to talk?
Yeah.
That's introducing. It's not tapping, they go tap it away. And that's interesting, but you're denying it again. And as you said, we have to, if someone's knocking on our door, hello, hello, we open the door and say, hello, how can I help you? Right. So use those words. How can I help you? What do you need? Who is talking? And you may not get a response, but I tell you will, in a couple of days, you may.
Yeah. Keep asking.
Keep asking.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked a bit, especially last season with my group, about our inner council, like all the people at the inner table that are trying to get heard, and they all have a reason, like they want to protect you in some way or feel like they're serving a purpose, and so sometimes just bringing that up is helpful. But so it good
changes the scenario, and they're the ones that are carrying the shame and guilt. That's why it's hard for you to release it. They have to release it.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Okay. And let's see. Betsy says, I have times that guilt overwhelms me, that I wasn't an aware parent and I messed up my children's lives. Looking back, I can see how I failed in certain areas. How do I deal with the guilt that pops up from time to time? I know it is best that I know I did the best I could with the knowledge that I had at the time, But now that I'm a wiser person, I'd like to fix some of my blunders. My children are now adults with college educations and children of their own, and they're very caring human beings. They turned out pretty good in spite of my immaturity.
Well, I think she did something right. But anyway,
Right. She's
the
lovely. I
guilt
know
you
her.
feel is felt with your children,
Hmm.
but the source of it is in your childhood. So you can't fix the guilt, shame. I call it shame guilt because if you don't find the shame in your childhood that produced the guilt, you will never solve the guilt in your present life. Okay, so that's what I would advise for her, is to find the sadness part of her or the anger part, some part inside of her, or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old that got shamed, and work with that part of herself.
Mm-hmm.
And that part is carrying the shame, and that part can release the shame. And then the guilt in her adult life can also be released.
Yeah. Is there a process that you have for that, or is it just asking yourself what's my earliest memory of feeling
Yeah,
guilt,
that's
shame?
really, it's simple. And then I have not developed a course because it's impossible. We are all so very unique, but I can
Mm-hmm.
give directions, and I work with people, and
Mm-hmm.
I can give them more custom counseling. But the script is the same. Go back in time, find where you were shamed, release the shame, and your present is happy. My saying is, change the future by changing the present,
Mm.
right? Change the present by healing the past.
Mm.
So it all goes back to the past, and you can't, well, a lot of people jump over it, and maybe they're just not ready to look at the past, and that's okay. We're all different. But if
Yeah.
someone wants to heal and change their future, you're going to have to go back to that past, and it's really joyous. You have to watch my video. It's really, I had all children actors as each emotion, and
Mm.
and the inner critic was a arrogant teenager. So it's
That's
really,
awesome. So everybody go check it out. It's loishollis.com. Straightforward. Just go to loishollis.com and you can learn more about Lois and find this video as well. That's also on YouTube. Let's go to another question. Patty says, how about saying no? Why does that so easily descend into guilt and shame?
again, that particular situation is primed by shame somewhere in your childhood, and you can't think it. It's a feeling. It sounds so simple, but it's not. It's difficult. But it's good for you to start and say, no, no, I don't accept shame and guilt, but I'll find out. Don't let it take hold of you. That's my
Yeah.
whole purpose today, is to say, okay, we're all going to get shame and guilt because that's just our culture and just the way we were raised. But we can say, no, I don't accept you, but I will find out where you sourced, and I will get rid of you. Now, the interesting thing about shame guilt is that it's a trickster. It's a
Mm.
magician. What happens when, like, remember all the Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy finds the all terrible Oz? She pulls back the curtain, and she just sees this little man with a big
Right.
megaphone. That's shame guilt.
Mm.
It's louder than it really is. And once shame guilt is noticed within you, it goes away. The words, the jig is up,
Mm-hmm.
it's up. Then it can't hide anymore.
Yeah. So we bring it to the light. We say,
Exactly.
hello, I
And
see you.
it goes away
Mm-hmm.
because it can't maintain its secrecy.
Mm.
Shame, guilt hides in our disinformation, and
Mm.
the truth about it makes it go away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I call myself an educator
Yeah.
counselor, because it's really about education. And people are not mentally ill. People are not sad, depressed. They're just not knowing the truth, but they were
Right.
never told the truth.
Right. Yeah. So we were talking before we started recording here today too about um, the response that you've gotten from being a shame guilt educator in prior years versus since,
The
you said
virus,
really since coronavirus.
yeah, turned everybody's
Right.
life upside down.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about what your experience has been in terms of wanting to share this work that you feel called to do with the world.
I was so excited when I discovered that I didn't have to go see a counselor for anger. I didn't have to see a counselor for depression. I mean, they have their place, but really, and depression and suicide and doctors for migraines. And I'm going like, gee whiz, this is like a full life job. And then I discovered that shame and guilt was uh, begins all negative emotions. It turns all our positive into negative. You really only have to get rid of shame, guilt. You don't have to, you have to work on each emotion, but the problem lies in shame, guilt. I was so excited and my life changed so dramatically within like days that everyone where I live, they go, oh my goodness, Lois, what are you doing? You got younger, you look happy. And they said, what are you doing? I said, I'm talking to myself. And they go, can we do that? And I said, I guess so. You know, if you want to. I'm in Sedona. That's the land of new things.
Uh-huh.
So they came to me and I showed them how to write to themselves and how to release that part, the shame, guilt. And they got happy and they sent their husbands and their kids. And then they got happy and all that. And then after like a year, I could not say it anymore. I was like, I can't say the same thing. It isn't like if you're an artist or if you're a musician or a technician or a computer geek or a speaker. It didn't matter what your profession was. The answer was always the same, and I couldn't say it anymore. So I wrote a book. This is my book.
Yes.
And I said, read my book, it'll save you money. And I can't say it anymore. I really needed a year or two not saying it because it was like,
So
it worked 100% of the time.
So the book is called, what is it, 500 Questions, One Answer?
No, that's my ebook free.
Oh. What's this book?
This is Emotional Revolution equals Evolution.
Okay.
Releasing Shame, Guilt. And they did not want me to put that in because they said your book will never sell. Because they write dogs about it.
So now coronavirus hits the world. COVID world, everybody wants to be talking to you.
Yes, it's quite interesting. Anyway, so my passion was I suffered for most of my life in shame and guilt, but I did not know that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I was always, I accomplished so much in my life, maybe because I felt that I had to. It doesn't matter, but it's, and I lost 3 pregnancies. And that's another, that can put shame and guilt in your life if you didn't have enough to begin with. So anyway, I was just so alive, more alive than I could ever be. And the people that came to me and they were very serious about doing the work that I was training them to do, got alive too. They called me that they got new jobs and they did this and this, and it was like magic almost. And when I was asked to speak about something, I told them that, and they said, well, we can't talk about that. And I was like, oh shucks, because that's the only thing that's worth talking about. Anyway, I wasn't invited back.
Oh no.
But now they're calling me.
Right, now everybody wants to know how to do this. Let's do one more. So let's see. Suzanne says, and this, let's just see. So she says, what do you all do when someone you love is in some kind of pain? Worrying for them doesn't help anyone. If we cannot fix their pain, what is the most helpful to that person and what keeps us healthy in the process? There is a tendency to feel bad for a suffering person out of guilt, maybe, or lack of healthy boundaries. I think of a Tibetan practice of Tonglen. You take in their pain and you send out love. Maybe that is true empathy. Experience, please.
Yeah, that's a multifaceted question.
Right.
However, the best thing you can do is don't give them guilt and shame. Now, you have to know what words are shaming and guilting and what tone of your language is shaming and guilting.
Mm-hmm.
That is the best thing you can do for them. And that, I think, is a prayer, to be mindful of your words. And that's why I want to produce my film, is to show the words that activate shame behavior.
Mm.
The best thing that she can do is don't shame and guilt them, and don't shame and guilt herself. She has to do the process to get rid of the guilt, but the shame that's pushing the guilt forward. And that's the best thing that you can do. Then she will be in love.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are loving, well, that's what you teach, we are loving, compassionate human beings that are beautiful, full of light. And shame has put a black curtain over us.
Mm.
So we take the black curtain off, which is getting rid of shame and guilt, and our light shines. So that's what you could do for someone who's ill, is give them light. But you're not really giving it, you're radiating it to them. But you have to get rid of the shame and guilt so you can have more light, so you can radiate to them. So it's really your process. He's pushing you to do the work.
Right. Great.
Does that help out?
I think so. We'll hear from that was from Suzanne. We'll see what she has to say. We just have a few minutes left, and I know you were going to share a tool with us or something that we can try out in terms of our own process.
I have my book here right here.
Okay. You can give us.
Because I forget what I wrote. You know how that goes. Okay, what I wanted to mention was that bullying is shame guilt. I think we all know that when a person bullies another person. Passive aggressiveness is very, very shameful. I'm going to read from my book. Is that okay? One of the
Sure.
Okay, Diane and Tom are having a conversation. Diane says to Tom, "By the way, I made a pot of vegetable soup." Tom sarcastically replies. Sarcasm is just straight shame. "You cooking again?" "I'm trying to lose weight." Diane has no response, but feels defeated for attempting to maintain nutrition for her family. Tom puts on the shame and guilt he's carrying of unworthiness onto his wife instead of acknowledging his eating binges. Do you see how I'm trying to explain how people put the shame and guilt they're carrying onto another person? And that's done unconsciously, of course. Does anybody remember the game called Hot Potato? They would pass something around the circle, and when the bell rang, you shouldn't be holding it. You just want to get, and that's what shame and guilt is. Everybody keeps on passing it around because they don't want it, but they don't know that they don't want. They don't know what they don't want. They know they want to get rid of it, and they feel better if they make somebody belittled or stupid jerk, or they make you feel lesser than. Well, they're releasing their shame and guilt onto you, which makes you feel better. Feel worse, and they feel better, but they still feel bad in 5 minutes because they still have shame and guilt. So that's the whole point, is to release it not on another person, but you have to release it yourself.
And it
So
sounds like the work is also to recognize when somebody else is handing it to you and to say,
exactly.
no, thanks. That's
And
not mine to carry.
we have been so hypnotized to shame guilt that we don't know it's inappropriate.
Right.
However, with your work, people learn to be more sensitive. So when something doesn't feel right, 99% is shame guilt. And you'll
Mm-hmm.
probably figure it out in a week or two. And as I was doing my own work, and a lot of my clients, oh my goodness, I remember I was really shamed that time. That was 2 months ago. It takes us time to realize we were even shamed.
Mm.
So my book has those particular examples in it. And one thing, when you do read my book, you have to read it more than once. It's not a weekend read, because the more you read, the more shame and guilt you can release
Mm.
unconsciously. It's very interesting how it's written. It's
Mm-hmm.
written to help you release shame and guilt, even though you're not actually think you're doing it.
So that's available through your website?
Website. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's this book you can get in print, and then there's a book that is an ebook.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would suggest for people to do the ebook first.
Okay.
I mean, you can do the other one too, but it would probably make more sense to do it in that sequence.
Okay. Great. So loishollis.com, everyone. Thank
Thank
you so much, Lois. Somehow we're at the end of our time. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. I really appreciate you coming on Inspirational Interviews.
Well, thank you. And thank you for allowing this message to be received.
Yes, it's so important. I'm totally in support of it. So thank you. We all need your work right now. So thanks for sharing it with the world and not holding back. So
Thank,
hope to talk to you again soon.
thank you.